Hey, what's up guys? It's Jake aka Tag, and today we're back at it again to showcase some top tier Pekka gameplay from Ivan from Bulgaria gang. He is currently sitting at 48 in the world, over 7,100 trophies with his Pekka Ram Rider deck. It is so unbelievably strong when played perfectly. You have the Poison, Snowball, and Barbarrel for a great time against bait decks, and you can sub out the Poison for Lightning if you have trouble against Inferno Tower decks, but the Poison gives you a much better matchup against Graveyard, bait decks, and also Night Witch Golem decks. So I prefer this variation, and so does Ivan. We're going to be jumping straight into some games, and we're going to see what Ivan does to absolutely annihilate people at the top of ladder. So let's go jump right into our very first game against Mortar Bait. As you guys can see, Ivan's opponent is 52 in the world, so obviously no slouch. He knows how to play Mortar Bait to perfection, so let's see how Ivan counters a masterclass player in Mortar Bait. So right out of the gate, I want to tell you the tips that Ivan told me. He really likes getting to double elixir and trying to defend as much as possible. When he gets to double elixir after he defends against a huge mortar push and he's up elixir, what he likes to do is he likes starting to Pekka in the back and building up a huge push to take the tower. Another thing that he also told me is when his opponent goes in for a mortar, if he has Ram Rider and he has Snowball in cycle, he loves to distract the mortar with a Ram Rider and then end up snowballing any bait unit. Because the Ram Rider combos really effectively with Snowball, any Rascal Girls, any Goblin Gang will immediately pretty much die to the Ram Rider combination. And obviously, because they use their mortar on offense, then they're not going to have it on defense for the Ram Rider, so they're having to use the squishy bait units, so you're effectively ensuring damage there. So you want to start your Ram Rider opposite lane when your opponent goes in for a mortar, and you really want to try to get to double elixir effectively as possible without taking too much damage. And then you want to start a Pekka in the back, and then you want to build up a push. So let's see how Ivan does that, and let's see how he accomplishes that. I think it's really important when you're going into these matchups to understand what your goal is in mind and what you're trying to accomplish. If you have a plan moving into the matchup, you're able to follow it kind of like a blueprint, and you're able to not veer too far off, and you know the best way of approaching it, so you're not going to use elixir inefficiently. So as we saw, he starts a Pekka here against the mortar. Very important to not drop it very close to the mortar, because then you're getting on top of the bait units really quickly. The bait units kill the Pekka, and then the Pekka doesn't distract. So as you guys saw, the mortar did not lock onto the tower very quickly. It actually hit the Pekka for a while because the Pekka was walking up. I know that seems a little bit awkward for a lot of people, but you really, against siege decks in particular, you don't really want to drop your Pekka right on top of the siege unit, because the siege unit will, if it's a mortar, it's just going to direct onto the tower. Or if they're having like an expo deck or a bait deck that has a lot of counters to the Pekka will never really get on top of the siege, and you're just going to take too much damage. The Pekka dies really quickly when it's close to the mortar, and there's a lot of opportunity of your opponent dropping units on it a little bit quicker. So as we just saw, he ended up going for the Ram Rider on the right-hand side to distract against the mortar. That was one of the things that I want to talk about, and that I said at the start of the game. So very important to notice that. Look at how much damage he got there. He's going to have to drop a bandit, and unfortunately one of those bats survived. So that's one of the things that you're going to see from world-class mortar players. Every single time they defend, they're going to have counter-pushing units, and they're going to make sure that you drop more elixir than you otherwise would have. So unfortunately for Ivan, he's not able to facilitate a Pekka push because his mortar player is very, very good. Against some Grand Challenge players or some lower level ladder players, you're going to be able to start Pekkas a little bit easier and double elixir if your opponent doesn't make great work of their counter pushing units. So unfortunately, he is not going to be able to start Pekka for quite a while. He's going to have to use a bandit on top of the miner. That's a pretty good thing to do. Also, if your opponent does not have fireball or big spell, you can drop the Electro Wizard and you can drop it reactively to miner. What ends up happening there is the miner does not get a single hit. If you drop that in time and your opponent doesn't have fireball, that's a great play to do. So as we just saw, he ends up dropping the Rascals in the back, and the Pekka is starting to slow push. So one of the things that I really like doing, and I've seen Ivan do this, and I kind of copied this from him, is one of the huge things that you're going to see time and time again is the Pekka, Baby Dragon, Bandit, or Ram Rider push. When he ends up having like a Baby Dragon with a Bandit or a Ram Rider, what's going to happen is it's going to be able to kill any of the squishy units that would distract the Bandit or distract the Ram Rider. And as a result, yeah, he just gets a ton of damage there. The Baby Dragon locks on, the Bandit locks on, and that is going to be tower. So Ivan played that rather flawlessly. I hope that you guys are able to take that blueprint that Ivan gave me and incorporate that into your own mortar bait gameplays, and I'm sure that it will give you a lot of benefits. So our very next game will be against Unreal, who is rocking the Pekka Bridge Band with Dark Prince variation that has popped out of nowhere after the Dark Prince buff and has become super prevalent. I think this is probably the most common variation that you'll face. So jumping into this game, I want to talk about starting plays. You want to cycle your bandit in the back, your barbarrel at the river, or the snowball on your opponent's tower, and those are all safe plays. He prefers to cycle the bandit in the back opposed to cycling the bandit at the river, because if you drop it at the river, it gives your opponent a little bit easier time to tornado it to the king tower. If you drop it in the back, it allows you to drop more units in front of it if your opponent doesn't respond to the bandit, and then your opponent can't actually effectively tornado that to the king tower as well. So you really want to make sure that you cycle your bandits in the back opposed to dropping it at the river. That was one thing that I learned. I personally didn't do that all the time, and now I'm always going to make sure that I incorporate that. Another thing that I talked to Ivan about, one of the game plans that he has in mind at all points is, hey, Pekka actually can run lightning a lot of times now, so you never really want to start stockpiling a Pekka plus Electro Wizard, Ram Rider, and single elixir, especially because you never really know what your opponent's got then. So it's going to be very risky to do that. Another thing that he told me is if you end up going for Ram Rider same lane with your Pekka and Electro Wizard, a lot of times your opponent should be able to get a very efficient defense since Pekka plus Electro Wizard is super strong, and then the counter push is just going to be too much. So if you're the first person to play really aggressive with that Ram Rider behind your Pekka, a lot of times you're actually just going to lose the game, or at the highest level, you're going to take a huge amount of damage. So another thing that he told me is you really want to make sure that you're going to bait out your opponent's Electro Wizard opposite lane of the Pekka if you can. That's going to be super, super nice. If they end up getting Electro Wizard plus Pekka in the same lane, it could be super scary. The only time that you ever really want to bait out the Electro Wizard same lane as the Pekka is when your opponent ends up having, say, very low HP, 1,200, and then you can start spell cycling, baiting out the Electro Wizards, and you can poison. As you guys just saw from Unreal, you can take it for granted from the other side as well. He ended up capitalizing when Ivan did not have the Electro Wizard in cycle, and he rushed opposite lane. So if your opponent doesn't end up having Electro Wizard in cycle, drop your Battle Ram, drop your Ram Rider, and go opposite lane and see if you can accomplish something, because that's going to be the best way, most efficient way of capitalizing on your opponent's Ram Riders, capitalizing on your opponent's Battle Rams. So he's going to go in for a snowball here because he's going to be able to finish off the minions. Pretty well played. He also ended up hitting the Electro Wizard, the Bar Barrels, and then the Bar Barrels actually going to demand a little bit of a presence here. So we'll see what he does now. He's going to end up seeing a Dark Prince in the back. He's going to start a Bandit. He's not going to start the Pekka because the Pekka would just be a little bit too much elixir. Now he's going to start the Pekka, and he sees his opponent go in for a Battle Ram. He's going to end up going for the Electro here, and he's going to drop it off to the side. A lot of people actually drop the Electro Wizard right on top. If you drop it right on top, that Bandit would get really close to that Electro Wizard, right? And then he wouldn't have been able to get that Bar Barrel down in time to stop Bandit from wrecking his tower. So that was really, really well played on Ivan's behalf. I liked his decision to go in for the Electro Wizard in the back as well. If you drop in that placement, the Barbarians, even if they pop from the Battle Ram, they will start walking towards the Electro Wizard. So you always want to make sure that you're dropping your Electro Wizard off to the side if you have the time to. So if that Battle Ram is really, really close to the tower, obviously you want to stun it with Electro Wizard Zap, so you will drop it right on top. But if you have the luxury, you're going to see what Ivan just does right there. He goes in for the Bar Barrel, keeps the Electro Wizard alive. The Bar Barrel is now going to be stopping Bandit from charging on it, and now he has a huge push. This is exactly what you want to do. Ivan is really asserting dominance right now. He has the Ram Rider, he's got the Bandit, he slow rolled the push because his opponent played a little bit too aggressive. His opponent decided to spam him a little bit, and he kept the Electro Wizard alive instead of forfeiting it. If that Electro Wizard had died right there, if it died to that Battle Ram, I don't think that push really would have had the punch behind it that it just did. So if you keep your Electro Wizards alive and you counter push, and you split lane pressure, you never really want to go Pekka, Battle Ram, go Ram Rider as well, then you're going to have a much better way. You guys saw two of the best Pekka players at top ladder. They never really went up for the Ram Rider, same lane as their Pekka, because they never wanted to give too much spell value with Electro Wizards. So very well played from Ivan. Lots of split pushing and lots of strategic maneuvers allowed him to win that game. So hopefully you guys learned from this. Let's move right on to the next game. So the very next game that we're going to be covering is going to be against B-Normal. This guy's infamous for playing Expo at the top of ladders. So this guy's going to be a very hard player to play against. Let's see how Ivan combats him. I know for a fact that this matchup, if you end up dropping your Ram Rider opposite lane of your Pekka, Baby Dragon, Electro Wizard, you're going to be in a better situation. So Ivan really is going to be focusing on that. You guys are going to see him try to avoid rocket value, tornado value in a lot of aspects. Usually, the Icebo player, Carnage, typically always rockets the Ram Rider. And that's going to be a negative trade every single time, but that's going to be effectively the best way of combating it. So we're going to see things that you saw from the last Mortar game, the very first game that we covered today. I assume that he's not going to Pekka right on top of the Expo in very many circumstances, if ever. He's going to drop the Pekka back closer to his tower and watch it walk up. Also, he's probably going to try to wait until double elixir before he's able to rattle off pushes. And the really scary thing is the rocket value. So this is actually going to get rocketed, unfortunately. It's going to give him some positive elixir trade, but Be Normal has to be very trigger happy to have that happen. Like, that is a very difficult thing to do. Hitting the Electro Wizard and Ram Rider right as it's about to charge. Notice where the Bandit was dropped, by the way. It wasn't dropped immediately, like, right close to the river, because you want to drop it in that little pocket, a little corner, so then it's able to get that effective dash. If you don't drop it there, then you're not going to have that dash. It's not going to immediately get on top. It's not going to do as much damage. It's going to take way more time. And then also it can get blocked by skeletons, ice golem, whatever your opponent wants to drop there. So Ivan's playing really well. He's going to go for the Pekka in the back because he has a lot of elixir. He knows his opponent does not end up having the Expo in cycle. It's not even close to being in cycle. You want to be counting cards and ideally recognizing how far your opponent's cards are going to be out of cycle. It's going to take 4 cards for him to get back to the Expo, and I know that Ivan was able to deduce that Expo was not even possibly able to be played there because his opponent didn't even have skeletons to cycle to it, so he would have had to drop really expensive cards. So there was no way for him to apply opposite lane aggression with that Expo in the opposite lane. So yeah, Ram Rider comes down. Another thing that we were talking about before, how he's going to play dual lane aggression, especially when your opponent ends up having the Ice Wizard and they have NATO. You never really want to go same lane into them, giving them that rocket value, allowing them to use that slow value on every single one of your cards. So things that we've seen so far in this gameplay, when you're ahead and your opponent doesn't end up having Expo in cycle with no means to get back to it, you can drop your Pekka in the back. You want to drop your Pekka near your tower, slightly in front of it. If your opponent goes in for an Expo and you have it in cycle, that's going to be your best answer. And if you're forced to drop a Bandit, you want to end up dropping the Bandit in the pocket to defend against the Expo, and then Bard Barrel as well. Also, the main way that you win this game is you go opposite lane. You don't really always want to go same lane and build up a huge push with Pekka, Baby Dragon, Ram Rider, Bandit, because it gets rocketed, and your opponent gets too much value with Ice Wizard. So, as we just saw, incorporating those tips into your gameplay, straight from Ivan right here, you will have a very easy time in this matchup, and he won this without any gripes, any issues. So it's really cool to just see a plan come to action seamlessly. Let's move right on to the next game, and let's see what Ivan does to assert dominance fully. So we're actually going to go jump right into our very next game against Royal Giant. Bag is going to be the player. If you guys know Bag, he is one of the best players. He has always been a pro player since the 15K days. So Bag plays pretty much everything, and you never know what he's rocking. Ivan is out here with cards that he doesn't really want to cycle because he's only going to end up having the Bard Barrel to cycle. He doesn't have Snowball, he doesn't have Bandit. Those are the 2 other cards that he could cycle. He could cycle the Bard Barrel at the river, but because you don't know what Bag is running, usually you don't really want to play super aggressive, especially at high ladder. Usually Ivan knows what his opponents are running, so he's going to be a little bit more aggressive depending on his opponent's deck, but if he can't decide what Bag is running right out of the gate, he's not going to play aggressive. He sees the Ice Wizard and he sees Bard Barrel, so he knows it's not going to be the Expo Carnage variation because that variation usually ends up having a log. If you end up seeing Ice Wizard and you end up seeing Bard Barrel, you usually want to think about RG or Graveyard. Or maybe it could also end up being a funky Golem deck. But after you see the Miner, it's definitely going to end up being either a Miner Control with Ice Wizard, or it's going to end up being the RG with a Fireball. And after seeing Mega Minion, it's still looking like either one of those. So Ivan, right out of the gate, he doesn't want to drop the Pekka. Whenever you know that you're going to be playing against an RG deck, you just want to be passively cycling, like you saw the Snowball cycling right there. He's just going to be saving his Elixir. He's not starting a Pekka in the back, because yes, he might have been up a little bit of Elixir, but if you do that, then you're actually just forfeiting your tower if your opponent ends up having a Royal Giant. Usually, you don't want to start the Pekka in the back in this matchup at all. It's effectively going to be a neutered deck. You cannot drop the Pekka unless you end up seeing your opponent's Royal Giant. He's going to be playing this matchup with his Bandit, his Ram Rider, his Baby Dragon, and his spells to get damage. Also his Electro Wizard. Usually, the best answers to the Miner, whether you're playing against Miner Control, a Mortar Control deck, or also even this RG Miner deck, is going to be the Bandit. Everything else could get spelled, especially the Electro Wizard. If your opponent has a spell, you don't really want to be dropping that right on top because it gets fireballed. Unless you're really low HP and you need to make sure that you deny all damage, then you put Electro right on top. If your opponent drops the Miner behind, like on the top left-hand side, of the tower, you can snowball that to the king tower. You guys need to know that if you're playing snowball, you need to be able to practice that and effectively snowball that to the king tower, because it gives you a huge advantage against people that are rocking miner and they don't know that placement. If they don't know that, easily just activate the king tower. And you're going to see Bag also probably avoid that placement because if you ever get that snowballed, you know you're just going to lose the game. So Ivan is probably going to end up predicting placements that are not in the placement that gives him the snowball value to the king tower. That's going to be one of the things that you guys definitely need to incorporate into your gameplay. You want to be predicting more so the front or the back, not on the edge of the snowball, because you want to still be able to have the potential of snowballing that king tower if they don't drop it in that spot. Anyway, we end up seeing him playing really aggressive here. As I said before, no Pekka needed. You just go in for the Rare Riders, you go in for the Baby Dragons, you go in for the Electro Wizard, and you finish off the game without the Pekka. This is one of the few matchups that you just do not drop the Pekka if your opponent does not drop their win condition. So very well played from Ivan. He was able to win that just with the Ram Rider and the Baby Dragon and counter pushing and playing super aggressive because his opponent's cards are just not able to feasibly deal with that, because the miner is actually going to be a severe impediment to Bag's defensive capabilities. He has 2 win conditions, and usually when you have 2 win conditions, your defensive distractions are going to be quite limited, and as a result, Ivan was able to just win the game without the need of his Pekka. And that's actually where we're going to end today's video. A huge shout out to Ivan's clan Bulgarian gang, and make sure to go drop him a fat follow on Twitter. If you guys don't know what his Twitter is, it will be down below in the description of the video and in the pinned comment. It is also going to be the exact name of the clan, so just go type that into Twitter, look him up, and drop him a fat follow. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and let me know down below in the comment section if you did and what pro or what deck archetype you guys want to see in the next one. Thanks for watching, thanks for chilling with me, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.